What's up, Wizards? It's time for Rule Zero, the show that helps you prepare for the best game of Commander. It is our hope that through our combined decades of experience playing EDH, cultivating a great playgroup, tons of great decks, and also trying a lot of outside-the-box variants and homebrew rules, that we can pass that golden knowledge on to you. This week, we're traveling a bit off of the beaten path to talk about a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention in Magic, comedy. And to do so, we have a special guest on the podcast, Brandon, creator, writer, actor, all the things are for MTG Variety Hour. How's it going?
Hey, Shawn, it's great. Thanks for having me. And I think you're the first person ever to actually refer to me as an actor. I guess that's technically correct because I do act on these. But
yeah, you're in
it's
them.
Kind of like, yeah. But I also know that I'm writing them, and I'm the person like managing it. But I know I'm the worst actor in all of it. Like everyone I get to go on is like a better actor than me. It's kind of like the Seinfeld thing where he was the worst actor in that show by a long shot.
Or Quentin Tarantino, for real. But you get that ability whenever you're the director and writer. You get to do that. It's okay.
It is a lot of fun. But I'm the worst actor of the bunch, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think it tends to lead towards comedy, right? Sometimes the bad acting helps to just make it even funnier.
It can, yeah. I haven't been doing this long enough to get super meta with it. I don't want to navel gaze too much.
For sure. From what I've seen, you are not doing a bad job at all. I mean, not to just, blow smoke up your ass.
Well, it's a good time to blow smoke up someone's ass when they come on your show. Like, that's a great time to do it. Like,
usually I start that way.
Yeah, and then by the end, you've completely broken down me as a person and my belief system.
I hope not. I hope it doesn't go that far.
No, thank you. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's been a blast, and I'm glad people are really liking it so far.
What kind of inspired you to jump into it?
I refer to myself as a student of comedy in the sense of like I've never done any actual classes or like I've never done improv troupes or never worked for a writing team of a TV show or anything, but I just adore comedy in all its forms. And one thing I really loved was like late night shows like Conan O'Brien's, Dave Letterman, that kind of thing. Conan especially what he's done since. I love that form of that he can be so silly, but you have to be really smart to be that silly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the TV shows, like it's been a while since we were clear that we're in the golden age of television. We've been in there for a while. There's still like, because of there's issues with the streaming model and all that, but there's so many people that have the chance to make something now that is off the formulaic thing that would work on a network television show. So I envisioned Variety Hour as one, people do funny magic stuff on the internet, and I'm like, I can be funny.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah. I know magic very well, so I wanted to kind of just share some things that I thought was funny and get some folks involved here in Asheville, North Carolina, where we live, with it. And then I have some grandiose plans of maybe making it into almost like a late night show.
Yeah.
That has like a short run. Maybe not like late night shows. Famously, were like 4 or 5 nights a week. They would be very topical in their monologues and stuff, so we wouldn't do that. But and it would be focused on magic.
I want to say, and I could be completely wrong in this, maybe a listener or something can correct me or tell me the truth, but in the vague firings of my neurons right now, there's a memory of Jake Boss, who's an editor and director on game nights for the Command Zone. He started as doing, before he was in Command Zone, some kind of late night riff type of show where he would invite a guest on. And this could completely be a dream I had. I don't know. It feels so faint and distant.
That sounds right. I mean, Command Zone does, Command Zone and game nights especially, they definitely have, I'm thinking of game nights, little ads like we were talking about before we recorded. Mm-hmm. They'll act them and they'll write them as almost like a little skit. And that's kind of for people who haven't seen the Variety Hour, to back up a little bit, it's largely skits. I'll do some voiceover stuff and some jokes that way, but it's largely quick little skits. I don't remember the game night. The Command Zone specifically doing those.
Yeah, I don't think they ever have. And he did this before he was ever hired on. It may have been one of the ways he was noticed to get on the Command Zone. So
probably, yeah.
And I just brought it up because I thought those were funny as well. Even if they were just in my dreams, I dreamed and thought they were funny. So tell me a little bit about something from MTG Variety Hour that either A, surprisingly took off and you were kind of like, I didn't expect that at all, or vice versa, something that you put a ton of work into and you're still really proud of, obviously, because it takes a lot of work to do this stuff, but just didn't seem to click with folks.
So the most famous video we have that I think is over 300,000 views on Instagram.
Awesome.
The one where, so I'm close friends, as you are, with the owner of a game shop here in Asheville, North Carolina, Charlotte, who's been on this podcast. They got in some promotional large cards, oversized cards, Resplendent Angel. So it was like, okay, there's something here. So the idea was that she'll be casting the Resplendent Angel and then has a buff effect. You spend 6 mana and it gets bigger. So we made it like, when you buff it, it's the huge version. And like, that's kind of funny. And then it's slapstick works. It's been around since the Three Stooges and actually since Shakespeare.
Absolutely.
well before anything. It still works. So I had her smack me with it. And we actually, like, it's a little flimsy. If anyone's seen those oversized cards before, they're not very thick. So what we did was we took a piece of cardboard the size of the card, just hidden behind it. So she was holding it with her hands, so that it was like kind of pinned to the cardboard, and whacked me with the cardboard, and the card itself was just on top.
Sure.
And kind of turned up the volume just a tiny bit on that smack.
Absolutely.
And we did I posted the super cut of me getting smacked like 15 times as well. But that was great. Like, it's really just like, oh, I buffed it. Like, what's going on? It's huge now. And then I got whacked. Like, it's like the timing of Charlotte and Go to Combat. Whack. Worked perfectly. Like, just getting the timing and the editing right. I worked really hard on it, and I'm glad that did very well.
Yeah.
I had a feeling like, this is simple. It's straight to the point. People will like it.
Okay.
And they did. The one thing that I didn't think people would like, and I was just like, I need something. Early on, I tried to post every other day just to try to get a base of content out there, slow down. I noticed at the bottom of lots of Thunder Junction boxes, there's a little note, and it says, it's like a little emoji bear face, and it says something like, I might be a bear, but I love magicsecretlair.com. And it's like just kind of like a little like secret little thing.
Sure.
And I literally did a post of just like me looking into the camera and going like, hey, did you notice that it says this little thing on here? And I just zoomed in.
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. That's the whole post. With like compared, not as big as the other one, but like it's one of my most popular videos. And I'm like, that took 2 seconds. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
And then I also have people in the comments being like, well, if I could afford a box, like if they weren't so expensive.
Oh, yeah. Right. Of course.
Sure. People are getting grief on social media. But the counterpoint, one that I worked really hard on, I thought is great. Kenji, who is a local player as well. And a side note, I love bringing in my local people. I've used a lot of different people in these videos, and we'll continue to do that. Like you've been in one, and I'm sure we'll find a spot for another. I love throwing little in-jokes to each other. Like Kenji is famously late to a lot of events that we do.
Oh, nice.
He'll be a little late, and it's kind of become a running joke. And he knows this. Like we love him, but like we can kind of rag on him a little bit. So I came to him with this idea, like, what if you're so late that like the shop is closed? Like, so it took a while to figure out what the hook was beyond that, because it needs a little bit more. So I figured out that I filmed it like do you remember in the 90s and 2000s, like those, like, it's 10 p.m. where, do you know where
Absolutely.
Your kids are?
Can't forget those.
So I did that voiceover like that and took a video of him outside a closed shop, just kind of peering in from the outside. And I waited for some big thing. Like, so I did it around Deadpool and Wolverine's like, people are missing F&M because they're out distracted. Like it's 7 p.m. Do you know where your Magic players are? I changed, like, the light would turn off, and then the lighting became like kind of a cold, like almost like noir style lighting, and I had like music in the background, like those violins, like that would be like dun, 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 like this like tense music, like a true crime podcast or something. The editing got it to like at the end, like kind of shut down like an old TV screen. I didn't know anything about video or audio editing. I've been learning on the fly. Yeah. So, and I also figured out how to make the text scroll when I was doing the long spiel. Sure. I was so proud of it. It did so poorly. And it's tricky because we're really, really at the behest of the algorithm and whether or not people will share them. I noticed if people can like it, and I because you can see the stats, like how many people liked it compared to viewed it, or how long they watched something. Yeah. And even the ones that people really are engaged with and they like, they don't necessarily share it. But if they don't share, I still have a pretty small following. I'm like 1,100 on TikTok and like 1,700 on Instagram, which is not nothing, but it's not huge compared to some of these giants. And if people aren't sharing it, it rarely leaves my circle. Yeah. It's kind of just hitting that just right. And I'm always trying to figure it out, but sometimes it's up to it's up to luck, hitting at the right time, hitting the right people that will share it, that will then help. I'm having fun.
Well, see, that's what matters, right? So you talk about the video that didn't do that well, but you're really proud of. Was it worth it to do that video?
I think so, because one, I learned a lot editing it.
Mm-hmm.
I did a couple early on just to get some quick engagement, but there's a lot of content out there there's a clever kernel in it, but it's usually just like a meme.
Mm-hmm.
It's Captain Holtz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine saying, "Oh no," and then there's like above it, it'll be like, "Oh, when the blue player sits down at the table."
Yeah.
It's like that's the whole joke.
Gotcha.
I've noticed that's half of the jokes of Magic Twitter or Instagram. It's just like, "Oh, blue players suck," right? People don't like having their stuff counted. Don't get me wrong, like it takes a little bit of, you got to put it together, you got to come up with that, but like they're fast to do and they go really well, but there's not a lot of yourself in that creation because it's kind of just like a copy and paste. And don't get me wrong, like I've done it too, especially early on when I was trying to get content out there real fast and just get something, get some engagement, because they do engage well. I know why people do it. To go back to, I'm very glad I did that other one because I want to have, when people go back and look through, I'm happy that this stuff's there because I want people to go back and see like skits, like mostly skits that took effort and creativity and people acting, and we took takes and we edited and we like had this unique thing that you can't find this anywhere else. If you go to my page, like sure, maybe someone will have thought of a similar joke and presented it in their own unique way, but like I don't think there's a lot of ones where it ends with people scooping, like, because they're giving up at their modern tournament. Like, they keep scooping, so they go home and just scoop ice cream, and they're just like...
I really enjoyed that one, actually. I related to
that one was
quite
great.
A bit.
and I am trying to... I know this is a Commander podcast, but I am trying to reach a broader aspect of not just one format of players. And that one was completely sold by Dusty, local player.
Yeah, he
his
did a great
maniacal laugh that I just told him to channel Newman from. So he's just laughing with ice cream in his mouth. Like, it's perfect. I love silly. I love that shit. Can we swear on here?
No, yeah, we already have like several times, so can't take it back.
We? I just can't.
I did one. You did one. We're good.
Anymore.
We've equaled out.
One of the other ones was I had the only one my wife's been in. It was for the Thunder Junction one. It was one of the first ones they did. So much fun. I just spoke. I had fake mustache over my real mustache. Spoke in a very cheesy accent, saying not real, like Westerny, almost Southern slang. Like it was mixing. It was terrible. And she was just my wife's just incredulous that like I'm like, what do you do? Like Thunder Junction is. I know you're excited, but you needed to take it down a notch. And it's so much fun. But I used Beyonce's Texas Hold'em.
Oh yeah,
in the background.
Sure.
Because it popped up on like TikTok when I was editing, and I was like, "This is great! Like, I'll use this." And then it was like, "Actually, I know we suggested it to you, but we're gonna hide it from folks because
lame.
Copyright." I'm like, "Well, don't suggest."
No wonder
I
didn't see it. Anyways, that sounds fun. And speaking of sets that are off the beaten path and totally nuts. Let's talk a little.
Yeah, how many cowboy hats in those though?
Oh, well, I don't know. I haven't counted all the cowboy hats in these unsets, but I'm assuming maybe 10.
There's probably a couple.
I'm gonna go with 10.
Yeah, I'd say there's a few.
Cowboy hats are just funny.
Especially when you use them on every character in an entire set, yes.
Yeah. I wish we could talk a little bit more about that too, because I have feelings on it, but not here. We're gonna talk about unsets in Magic and whether or not unsets, well, I don't think they're ever going to come back after the miserable like experience that was Unfinity will ever come back. Not personally speaking, although I did not enjoy some of the cards for sure, as one player from a totally different game ruined my comeback in my game by casting a spell from outside of it to destroy my main creature. I didn't love that. I stabilized my board finally. I was at like 4 life, and then they were able to destroy one of my creatures from their own game. Like they could destroy one in their game and then one in an adjacent game.
Oh, is this like the Unfinity like pre-release or event?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had our own little pre-release event outside in Wyvern's Tail, I think. And I was just so excited to come back. And we weren't playing for anything, not prizes, but the expectation of like, I finally did it was quickly.
It is silly that, they're like do something in the game next to you. Like those are weird. But before we get into that, let's recap the unsets, shall we?
Okay, will do. And I put them in a bit of a ranking in general for my personal taste. I think you may share the first one. I don't know, but I rank Unstable, which was released in December 8th, 2017, as number 1. I think it was my favorite of all the unsets. It had certainly some mechanics I didn't fall in love with, but I think some of the jokes were top tier. I don't know. What were your opinions? Do you remember a lot about that unset in particular?
That one I did, because I did you ever play the first two? Because this is the third one.
No, I was out of Magic when those were released, so I'm looking back on them.
Me too.
Okay.
So I played it and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Also that my favorite cycle of basic lands came from Unstable. The full art John Avon lands, I love.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
That was a lot of fun. The humor was often on point. Some mechanics were weird. The dice rolling was fine. I think this was them experimenting with dice rolling before bringing the D&D set out. I did enjoy the different. You could like combine two creatures into one.
Yeah,
kind of like a mutate thing, but had different rules.
And I think it came out before Mutate as well. So it's like one of those.
2017. Yeah, so this was like 3 years before, or 2.5 years before Ikoria.
So like that's one of the things people should know about unsets is often talked about is they experiment with a lot of mechanics. And there's certainly been a lot of cases where like Mutate or dice rolling cards, like the Sword of D&D was in an unset before the Dungeons and Dragons set came out.
Yeah.
They're kind of like a precursor.
They do a lot of testing. It's kind of like almost like market research kind of about like how much silliness is enjoyed. Like there's some mechanics that debuted in Silver Border and like we can actually make this work. I would not be surprised to see, I know in the previews here you brought up a couple, just for example, Last Strike was a thing that totally would work with a small errata. So the rules, it's just kind of like, because it's something that's great because it's kind of silly. It's like you're slower than normal, but like you can grok it intuitively.
Yeah.
You know, like Last Strike. Okay, there's first strike, there's regular damage, and there's Last Strike, and then the three-headed goblin.
Perfect example.
Has triple strike. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. So that's fun, and that one is I could see them eventually.
Yeah, and I thought that joke was just excellent. Like I love the jokes that were more meta, I guess, in the set. So extremely slow zombie. It has 4 different printings, and each one is a different season. And the flavor text on each one, if you put them all together, is brains just spelled out, but really slowly across all 4 cards.
Yeah, like 2 letters in one.
Yeah, exactly. So not a great card, but great joke, I think.
Yeah, and you have the Target Minotaur, which also has different versions because the joke is like it's getting killed by other famous magic spells, lightning bolts, firebolt, like stuff like that. So, and it does something when it's like targeted by an opponent's spell or something.
And I brought up another one, Baron von Count. It's 1, a black, a red, 3/3.
I love that one.
Yeah. Carl, one of the other folks in our shop, plays Baron von Count deck still to this day, and I think it's a blast. It allows you to pick a lot of cards out of Magic's history that no one plays anywhere else because there may be a level up card or something that has the numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on it somewhere on the card, and it's the only place that card ever sees the light of day.
I used that I built before the Monty Python Secret Lair. Years ago, I built the Monty Python theme deck for the Holy Grail. I used this card to reference the fact that King Arthur is unable to count.
Absolutely. It's
in the
great.
entire movie.
Yeah.
1, 2, and then skips right to
5, sir. No, 3.
So that's good. And I know you have after Unstable, you have... So as far as your rankings, I'm pretty close to yours. I think the first 2 for me are tied.
Okay.
I think I would like Unglued, which is you have number 2. As much or more than Unstable if I were to play it back in the day. I just did.
Yeah.
I think because there are so many even more in references to Magic. This is the first time they did something like that. There's lots of little in jokes. It was really creative to come out of nowhere. I love the lands in that one too. Look at me on the DCI here. You just ban a card. There's
Summon Beast, Lexivore. So deals damage to any player, destroy target card in play other than Lexivore with the most lines of text in the text box. So I kind of love just like the meta aspect of like, yes, Magic's becoming more complicated. We know that. We get it. All right. Here's a card that destroys the most complicated card on the table. And as an ADHD person, that I love that because that's what I do anyway in real life. Is when I see a card I don't want to deal with that card. I just destroy it.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, this was 98. This was the original.
Yeah,
the original joke set. Up until then, everything was just a set.
Yeah, I think the story behind it was just that Mark Rosewater needed a creative outlet, and they were like, "Okay, here's a bone, take it." And it was 88 cards only. Ran with it, and Mark Rosewater famously, I guess before Magic, was a writer on Roseanne, so he was a bit of a comedy writer himself, and he needed to scratch that itch. Yeah, I mean, I think it was like early first season or something, and then he just left that to be head designer or whatever he was at that time for Magic.
The old Roseanne to Wizards of the Coast
pipeline. Yeah, absolutely.
Tales all this time.
So I enjoyed that it was a smaller set. Clearly, they didn't give him a long leash to work on it, but it had a lot of Magic in jokes and jokes about where Magic was headed as a game at that time, which I appreciate. I think I would prefer that over all the dexterity type cards and stuff that I honestly don't care for.
And they do have a few of those in every one of these.
Yeah.
We see a little bit of that. One of my favorite ones was the Herloon Wrangler.
Okay.
Which is it's a Minotaur that has denim lock.
Sure.
So if your opponent is wearing jeans, it is unblockable.
Yeah.
And I just think that's just funny. Like it's so out of left field. It's so, but like again, you can rock it right away. You say denim walk. Yeah. You know how, especially because back then, land walk, mountain walk, swamp walk, planeswalk were all like more common than they are now. We don't really see them anymore. But that back then, they're very common parts of the game. So it's like, okay, well, let's make something else. And the art is just like looks like a Calvin Klein ad or Wrangler's ad.
I remember this card now. You could even metagame if you knew that was happening.
Yeah, you remember it when I mentioned the sexy Minotaur.
Yeah, well, of course. Who wouldn't remember that? And there's been some other funny cards like that that reference something in the real world. I'll bring up one type that I remember. It was like, if it's night, the card does this. If it's day, the card does this. I don't honestly love those. I don't know what it is about it. It's like it's too situational almost. I don't know when I'm going to play a game of Magic often.
What if we can scale it down just a little bit?
Yeah.
What if we make it situational but much slower? There's the season one from Unstable. It's a tree that, depending on what season it is, it does something else.
Sure.
So that's one of
yeah, that gives you at least 3 months to work with. That's fine, I think.
Yeah, you know what it's going to do.
These all come out in the fall or winter most of the time. It came out in October, December, so I think it always did the same thing.
Interesting. Yeah, they all came out in anywhere between August and December. So I guess you could get everything but spring there.
Yeah, sure. If that is Unglued, the original set as number 2. Number 3 I have is Unhinged. It has some bangers in it. It's 141 cards. It released in November of 2004. Cheaty Face being probably the most famous, I think, right?
I think so. For those that don't know, it's a 3-mana 2/2 with flying. But
you never pay that.
No, you don't pay that because if you sneak this onto the battlefield without your opponent noticing right away, you just get it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a little bit of a dexterity one, but not in the same way. Like you don't have to flip it, you don't have to try to balance something. It's just kind of like distract your opponent or opportunity to put it down. And this is kind of invoked in one of my favorite unstable cards, actually, Entirely Normal Armchair, where you hide it on the battlefield and then you can eat an attacker at some point, as long as no one has noticed that it's hidden. So I would always hide it under a basic land.
Yeah, I got somebody with that at the pre-release, actually.
That's fun.
So Cheaty Face, best story that I've got for it, at least, is not from me, but from a player in our group, Mike Green, who during that small window when they released Unstable, where they were like, you can play cards in Commander, he built a deck, and inside of the sleeves of every single 100 card, he had a Cheaty Face. He bought out 100 Cheaty Faces. And so all the Cheaty Faces were on the table already. We just didn't know it yet. And at some point, he just revealed and swamped everybody.
Yeah, he'd be like, okay, I have enough cards on the battlefield that I can kill everyone this turn. Yeah. By the way, there's Cheaty Faces everywhere.
There's everywhere, yeah.
That's fantastic. and it seems true to the spirit of what these are.
Yeah, for sure.
It is silly, a little broken, just people having fun. I would say this is my least favorite unset, because I think the humor is pretty juvenile.
I agree. There's so many
in a lot of these
cards.
Cheaty Face is fine. There's a whole run of cards. The whole joke is that ass means donkey and butts.
Yes, I know.
And that's the joke.
I know.
And they make that joke over and over. There's smart ass and fat ass, and it's just fucking. It's weird.
Yeah, I agree. It sucks.
How many swears is that in a row? But
keep going.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and there's I feel like there's a card or two that references how sexualized women were in Magic earlier on. Which, don't get me wrong, as if you're owning that, you're just acknowledging it, that can be funny.
Sure.
There's owning that too. There were half points.
It started to get more complicated, which was one of the things that annoyed me with unsets over time. It was how complicated does this funny game need to be? Because now I'm doing a lot of math and stuff, and I don't really find that hilarious.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, this was a little bit the humor was a little more puerile.
Yeah.
And that missed the mark for me on some of them. But again, there's a bunch of cards. Some of them are great.
Well, I agree. I didn't even show the ass cards in our Word doc because, I figured everybody remembers them and doesn't really find them that funny.
Yeah. City of Ass is not that funny. It's a little funny the first time, I'll be honest,
Sure.
because it's just butts everywhere. Yeah. That's the joke. It's it's butts.
Not a lot of staying
If
power.
you are not, this is kind of really geared toward a 13-year-old boy, like that whole set. Whereas the humor in a lot of other ones are, like you mentioned, like the zombie. Like it takes a whole year throughout the seasons for it to reach the opponent. It's got last strike, and it's got a one-word flavor text that's split between 4 cards and 4 seasons. Like that's a little more like that's not. Here's butts, here's boobs, here's guns, like here's like stuff for teenagers.
I wonder if Mark Rosewater was going through a phase at that point. I don't know what was going on. Maybe he was under pressure to be like, this has to be popular for the masses. Masses love asses, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if they said like, okay, we got to get the kids. We're gonna make it edgy. We got to make it. I wonder if like Garbage Pail Kids came out around that time. Sure. Like make it gross.
So the next one I have on here is Unfinity, and only because of the controversy within. And
what was that controversy?
The controversy was that they had acorn stamps and they had regular stamps. And if you had a regular stamp, you could be played in any eternal quote unquote format. But if you had the acorn stamp, then you were a rare or mythic or whatever that could be. Only played in unsets or just kind of casual.
Yeah. Well, the acorn stamps were also in uncommons and commons. They were just in like a shadow and rather than actually.
Oh, okay.
But instead of silver bordered, instead of the very identifiable silver border, meaning that like this is not a real play card, like it's a joke card. It was the little stamp at the bottom, which is hard to tell at a glance. Yeah. It got even more confusing when they misstamped a bunch of cards.
I remember that controversy as well.
There were a bunch of cards that were acorn cards, so not legal for any constructed or commander play, that had the full regular stamp on it, or vice versa. Like, so it's already confusing, and then you screw it up in that way.
Yeah.
And
people remember too from this set other controversies that came from this one. Instead of making jokes so much. And sure, there were some jokes, but it had way more of a storyline to the set. Like there's a space circus. And so there's going to be tons of clowns and robots and attractions at the space circus, which is honestly a very annoying mechanic. I'll play with it at the table if people want, but I don't love it.
Attractions were kind of fun to be because it brought some randomness to it. Yeah. It made sense in a Magic sense because you're like setting up like a resource. You're taking advantage of it. You're getting value off it. You're trying to do a thing. Really, for me, it was, and I'm sure the other part of the controversy was stickers.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And they just happen to also be broken in certain formats.
Right. Like old Mind Goblin or whatever. So you could go.
Blank Goblin, but it's always Mind Goblin.
Always Mind Goblin. And besides the funny video of the professor using Mind Goblin D's nuts on Cedric Phillips, I didn't really get anything out of it.
And Cedric not getting the joke for a while.
Which was great.
Yeah, their reaction was better than the joke was itself. And it became a problem for, like, they had to eventually ban them in Legacy, and they're basically banned everywhere. I don't know, did Commander officially ban them as well?
I don't think so. I think you can still use them.
The RC.
Yeah.
Because it became a problem because you have to have your own sticker deck, randomized of at least, I think, 10
cards. Like 10 cards, right, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't always get the same one. It has to be some level of randomization. You'd have to have them, so people would bring them for because it was the Mind Goblin that was basically like a ritual in certain decks. But there were also decks that ran Phyrexian Metamorph. So if you thought you might be getting your opponent, you might copy a Mind Goblin at some point, a blank Goblin, you had to bring your own sticker deck just in case. And it's an elegance. You have to stick things. I don't know. I'm sure people had some other workarounds besides the physical sticking.
Yeah, I think some Etsy shops opened up for that kind of stuff, but it was still a nightmare. The fact that you have to bring 10 sticker cards and then worry about that before your Legacy match it's just not in the right place. And the fact that Wizards thought they needed to do that to sell it, which is, I'm assuming, what is the reason they did this. They're like, oh, well, we've got Legacy or like vintage playable cards stuck in this set, so now you have to buy it.
I think it was Commander. I think they did specifically want these to be bought by Commander players to play the legal cards. Yeah. As opposed to just doing a full joke deck.
Yeah. Recently, and we'll move on from this set after this, but recently the Commander Rules Committee came out with a statement. It was met with controversy because everything on the internet is met with controversy. That they're actually...
Right, I remember saying that the sky was blue, and then they were outraged. People were like, not here, what? It's dark. What the heck?
Yep. Thanks to Twitter and everywhere else. So they are going to release a document at some point. It's not going to be an official unbanning of a lot of uncards, but they're going to go through and list out which cards are pretty good for your Rule Zero conversation. You can play these at the table. Things like Goblin Tutor, I'm sure, will be on there, which are like, dice rolling's totally acceptable in Magic these days. It's not a strange thing anymore. So let's have Crux Other Thumb or whatever.
Yeah, things that make sense. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Last Strike or Baron von Count went in.
Totally.
Things that you can grok. Probably not the dexterity ones. Like, there's one you have to keep your head on the table for the entire thing.
Please, no.
Very funny when Charlotte did that for the pre-release for Unfinity. I think that's great because then it gives, like, it's a shorthand. And that, like, okay, we want to play with some of these silly cards, but not the ones that are ridiculous. And I think if the rules committee says, like, we kind of did that work, and these are the ones that make sense and are not crazy.
I appreciate the effort. At least it's a proactive action from the rules committee to make everybody's game conversations a little bit better. In my play group, everything's fine, but I know not everybody experiences that amount of leniency with, like, people want to play silver bordered cards or not. So having a little bit of backup will be nice for those folks to play things that, like, who, what, when, where, why. Totally fine card in Magic.
It's the 5-card split card.
Yeah, and just everything does like destroy an enchantment, destroy an artifact, whatever, gain 3 life. It's very simple stuff. None of it's strange, but the flexibility of it is kind of neat.
Yeah, and it's a little silliness is fine. I'm a fan of silliness in Magic and all the formats to do it. Commander.
I would have been shocked if I signed you up for the podcast and you weren't okay with a little silliness, at least for this topic.
Yeah, I mean, this is also someone that likes to play competitively as well. So
fair.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, of course. We are a multitude inside of ourselves. So let's talk
about... Some of us are multitudes. Some of us are less than one.
So let's talk a little bit, because the last one was Unsanctioned, which was just sort of like a standalone, almost box set of 30-card decks and a lot of reprints. There were a couple new ones, Beebles, like a Beeble Planeswalker or something, but nothing that really stands out. They did, however, bring things like Cheaty Face and things back into print, which was nice for people who...
Yeah, people that missed the first couple goes rounds. Yeah. I think that was cool. I got that, and I haven't really done anything with it after the first
Me either. It sits in my board game cabinet waiting for something. I don't know.
Yeah, has some sweet lands.
It does.
Like they all do.
Yep, they all do. Let me just ask you this really quickly. What do you think is the future of Unset? I don't think they're going to go back because of the financial losses and the controversy therein. However, do you think Mystery Box is the future of kind of comedy in Magic?
Did it take a financial loss? Did they say
I believe it did not do nearly as well as Unstable. Like, Unstable had a lot of additional print runs. It was a shockingly popular set. It kind of brought back the fire for unsets after a long dry spell.
Yeah, because how long was between those two?
I want to say 2017 was when Unstable came out, and then
Unhinged was 13 years because Unhinged was 2004. Okay, wow. I do think it's going to be a hard press another for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe they try to go back and recapture what people liked about it. I think
Silver Borders for one. I mean, it's nostalgic
Silver
now.
Borders for one, please. Yeah. I have to hope they learn a lesson in some ways, but I think Mystery Booster and, to a larger degree, Secret Layers are the form that the spirit of jokes and unsets will take. The average Magic set itself has become sillier.
Very much so.
Like, Karlov Manor, despite a serious tone, was kind of silly in the sense that everyone was just wearing a detective hat.
And you had a Clue tie-in, so can't wait for the Mr. Potato Head tie-in soon, too.
Sure. I can't wait for the Downton Abbey tie-in. That's for some, I don't know, like there's like the racing one. There'll be a Fast and Furious one, I'm sure.
Oh, no.
Anyway, Gran Turismo, all the great characters in that franchise.
Yeah,
Mystery Booster is it's serving a lot of purposes. It's a huge reprint vehicle. It's a chaos draft. It's like what they're doing now with the white border future sight border is kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that, like, because white borders are famously disliked. Not
by me.
Not 100%. No, not 100%.
Sure,
folks. I enjoy them.
Yeah.
I used to do all my basics in white borders.
Yeah,
that's it. But I think there's opportunities in supplementary products like this to be a little bit more silly, be a little more jovial. Like, they also have the Mystery Booster playtest cards, which are very silly.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin Bearhay, Unknown Events at MagicCons, they have those other playtest cards. Those are also very silly. They're made often with people at, like, panels and stuff. They kind of collaborate and joke around. And I think Secret Layers as well. Like, they have a lot of freedom to, like, you see, like, the chibi Planeswalkers with the huge heads. Like, those are very silly.
Terminally online goblin release that they just had.
Yeah, the one that was all like Instagram posts, but through goblins.
Yeah.
Like, that is very, very silly. The joke didn't hit for me, but for some folks, they loved it.
Or Comic Sans Ruination, you know.
That one really didn't hit for me.
Oh, it will when you're at the next table with me. No, I'm just kidding. I don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get it is like it's supposed to like kind of bug people even more, especially because those are all cards that will like someone casts Torment of Hailfire against you, you're going to be a little frustrated.
Yes.
So I guess that
doesn't make it better. That's for sure.
Comic Sans certainly does not make it better. So I think there's a lot they can do, especially with like they're not introducing usually new cards to Magic through secret layers. They are just kind of skins on top of it. So if you don't like the jokiness, if you want your Nicol Bolas to be scary and intimidating and not cute, you don't need to use the chibi version of it. So I think that's where we will see a lot of that, which is what I'm excited about Magic, and that's kind of like this opening of this taking itself less seriously. To me, Magic is camp. And it has been for a long time. It is open to experimentation, open to expression of niches and ideas and corners of the popular culture that is not inherent in Magic. The game system is a fantastic medium. There's storytelling inherent in it. There's art inherent in it. There's writing as far as flavor text or I can go. I do like that it is becoming, for every person that is annoyed that there's modern technology in Duskworn, there will be 2 or 3 people, if not more, that are like, this is really cool. Either I like this as a Magic player, or will get more interested in the game as a result, because they're not huge fantasy people, but the game itself has so much to offer. And like any other, talking about diversity and offerings, like the more there is, the more people, the less narrow an offering is, the more people can come into the fold. And I think there'll always be something there for people that don't want Universes Beyond, that don't want the jokiness. Like, you can get all those versions of the cards. You might have trouble finding games where none of those cards come into play, but it's just kind of, the game has to evolve. And I'm not saying I'm excited about the Marvel one. That's going to be a lot. I agree. I'm looking forward to the chase for the serialized one of one Infinity Stones.
I may be in danger of checking out at that point, but there's plenty of cards that I can play with regardless. I checked out for Doctor Who too, it's fine.
Well, it's the thing, is like I could not be less interested in Doctor Who, and that's nothing against people that do like it. It's just not something I'm interested in. It has not affected my enjoyment of Magic whatsoever. I occasionally will come across it in the Commander game. Fine. Again, like the acceptance of like, when they do a property that I love, I'm gonna go nuts for it, and people have to deal with that. Like not everything will be for everyone. The goal is to have something for everyone.
So let's talk a little bit now, switching gears into why Magic is, one, ripe for riffing and ripe for jokes, but also counter to that, why is it that so many Magic channels that more focus on the funny or the humor side of things don't seem to do as well? Now, granted, I don't have the numbers and analytics from all these channels, but I've listed out a bunch of places. I think for short form video, like TikTok, stuff like that, or Instagram, they seem to do a little bit better. But for long form, like YouTube, these videos and channels do not get the due, I think, that they are deserved.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to go over a couple of those that you have here?
So I have some listed. Many are older. I'm an old man. I apologize. I'm sure Brandon can bring me up to speed with some newer ones.
I am not. I don't think you're older than me, or I think you're like maybe a year or two. We're about the same age, my friend.
Well, you're young at heart, and
I am a child. Yes, on the inside, yes.
So we have Good Luck High Five with Megan and Maria. Luminaries in the Magic community. They've been around forever. They started out on the Profs channel as like sort of a subsidiary almost of Tolarian Community College before they went on their own. They've done all kinds of comedy sketches. I think Maria is in improv currently and talks about it openly, about how it's improved like her life in a lot of ways. And they just did like a musical number on their channel. But I look at their video counts and like the views.
I'm sorry. I just like that you just said like improv, like an AA class or something. Like, she's open about it. It's improved her life.
Right. Yep. Don't need to hide in the shadows anymore.
Come clean.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to have an intervention. Clown intervention.
Oh.
I mean, some of the videos they have get lower view counts than the ones I release. And I don't release things that are of that amazing quality. And I have mostly porn bots that follow me on Twitter. So it feels, one, I know there are two women in the space trying to do a thing. And I'm sure that plays into it as to why they're not as popular, unfortunately. That should be the name of the next Sunset. Anyways.
Unfortunately, and it's just, here's the difficulties of being a not straight white male content creator. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
We say this as two white men talking to each other here.
Yeah, I know.
No, you are absolutely right. It is a different playing field.
So this is my shout out for their channel. Like, they almost always riff at the beginning of everything, and they release a lot of great videos about like draft and Commander and have a Commander play series. So watch their channel a little bit more. Anyways, then an older one that did take off was another white male, Nathan Holt, who released the Walking the Plains. And this was sort of comedy on the side of being the first like quality documentary series that focused on Grand Prix and Pro Tours, to the point where Magic actually employed Nathan Holt to film Walking the Plains. And I think there's even a Walking the Plains movie that came out of that. It's on Netflix.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, but he would always dress up as like this horrific like wizard and just like dark, almost like the Emperor from Star Wars. And he would be like this brooding figure who was just trapped on this elemental plane with us peons. And he would go to these events and interview people as this character. It's pretty funny. People can go back and watch like 25 episodes, not only for the comedy, but it also brings like a really great view and interviews with a ton of pros and stuff that I think hadn't been done that well at that point. So
you still don't see a lot of that.
No, I'm hoping for more of it as the Pro Tour comes back. I would love to see Standard and stuff take off again, because I feel like personally that's where I thought Magic was at its healthiest.
I think a strong Standard is great for Magic as a whole.
Me too.
And I think the huge growth and popularity of Commander is great, and it's emblematic of something great about the game, about people. But I think Wizards of the Coast ignoring every other format for it, like when you have Modern Horizons cards that are primarily designed for Commander, that becomes a problem. And doing nothing for Standard players as well. They realized recently, like, oh wait, why aren't people playing Standard? We need to fix that. I think they realized a couple years too late, but hopefully, I still play Standard at our local shop. Like, we still have it. I think it is a blast. And hey, first Grand Prix. It's not Grand Prix anymore. It's
what is it called? Yeah, I don't remember.
Something series. Oh, geez, I can't remember. But it's basically Grand Prix. First one's at Atlanta in January, and in the Standard format.
It's pretty exciting.
So you can come out, open entry. You don't have to qualify for it, and if you do well, you can go on the Pro Tour.
Yeah, I love Grand Prix when they were around. So whatever this new series thing is, I will also love that.
Signature series, I want to say.
Sure, I think that sounds good.
That sounds right.
Alliteration. Yeah. So another comedy sketch. Did you ever see this? This came on a channel called Snow Stories on YouTube. It's Mana Screwed, and it was a sitcom sort of series that followed a character as they were, trying to be an adult, quote unquote, and also play Magic around their adult.
Oh, you can't do both.
Yeah, I know. Simple joke, but they did it well. There was a lot of professional actors, actually bit players you see in other things in Hollywood often. And it went on for 10 episodes. They talked about a season 2, but a lot of the clips didn't get that many views overall. And I don't know. If people want to check that out in the comments, y'all can leave your notes, thoughts on why it didn't do well. I'm going to guess because in episode 9, they hinted that at some point Andy Dick would be in the series, and he was in like the very end, and he just tanked the whole thing. I'm going to assume that's what happened.
I will assume that anything Andy Dick touches becomes radioactive.
Yeah, 100%.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's an invitation they shouldn't have accepted it. Be like, Andy Dick wants to be in this because he'll be in anything. No, thank you. Now,
there's a reason. It's because his schedule is full. It's free.
Yeah,
because no one else wants it. Anyway,
you talk about good games morally. You brought this to me, and I've seen a couple of their clips online. They're really funny.
Yeah, they're in Australia.
I think it's Australia. Yeah,
I think it's Australia. I've never been to that hemisphere, so I couldn't say myself. But they're hilarious. They're a game story in Morley, I believe, Australia. The shop is called Good Games, and they just have so much fun. It's hard to describe, but they are kind of. I discovered them like right around the time I started. I had conceived of my own of the Variety Hour and what I was going to do, and as I started getting more entrenched and like researching a little more, just seeing what was out there, like they are kind of, for me, the golden standard of good in this corner of the universe, in the Magic world, the gold standard for comedy writing.
Sure,
they have such a good finger on the pulse of what people are thinking and feeling. And not just that, they are silly, they're fun, they are clever. It's hard to describe the sketches without making them sound rote or boring.
Yeah, people should go watch them. They're simple and fast.
Absolutely, right? Go watch them. They're fast. They play with the form a little bit, like the little self-referencing meta jokes, and they do it well. Like they did a Between Two Ferns spoof, where it was one of them like, oh, thank you for coming to see me. It's like, yeah, I work here. Like you work for me. What am I doing here? And they're just being rude to them and stuff. And like there were I guess that they mentioned in the comments there were two forests on the wall behind them, but they sat in front of them, so they didn't notice that you couldn't see that they're between two ferns. One of my favorites was a character comes in and is like the perfect customer because they're a game shop. Will come in like, hey, I have a list. I have a few. I have it written out. I'll take as much time as you need. I'm gonna go next door. Would you like something to drink while I go next door? Hey, I'm a happily married man. But like I would like to compliment you. Like you look very nice today. All this great stuff, and it's like, oh, he's so great. Thank you. And then he's like, oh, by the way, have you heard that Jesus is coming back and he's made entirely out of prawns, like out of shrimp? And then like that's the whole thing. It's like, you've ruined it. Yep. And then of course there's like their comedy timing is perfect. The editing is perfect, and then at the end like it's like he ruined it, and the guy walks away. And it's like and one of the other guys working there goes, is he talking about shrimp Jesus? Like that great little singer at the end. It. They're fantastic. I cannot recommend them highly enough. They seem like great folks, and they're just really funny.
And so we have now a couple more that we'll hit really quick, and then we'll have a more broad discussion to close things up. We got the Professor's Office Hour sketches, which he's got a lot of great writers on his show. I really enjoyed the most recent one in which he's talking to Ashiok and the cosplayer who plays Ashiok very well, which I can't remember their name. It's such a great ending bit to that sketch. I suggest that people watch it for sure. He does those really well, but they're not the main focus of his channel. Clearly, he's just having a blast with people that he likes.
If you are having fun and you want to bring people into, like, that's what I'm doing. Like, I have friends around here that, like, I just love being silly and doing these videos with. Like, I don't think if I got professional actors, would the skits improve slightly? Probably. But, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to have fun, and I think that carries through. I think if you, and I was coming from someone who has a writing background as well, like a creative writing background, like if there's joy, genuine joy and curiosity and fun had in the creation of art, of any kind of creation, it comes through for the reader or the watcher, the viewer. It comes through and it means a lot. And that is the closest thing to like an X factor that there is. And, you know, for anyone out here that this thing of doing that, like, don't limit yourself to like, I can't do this until I'm later. Just do the stuff you want to do.
Good point. Yeah. And so that is the difference. And particularly, I think, in comedy, like you have to have that genuine joy underneath it all. Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're making something that's funny, supposedly. It's not going to come through.
If you don't get the joke, if you don't think it's funny, like, I mean, there is something funny about someone not getting a joke. Sure. But, like, it has to be then framed in the way that is funny. Like, what are you doing this for if you're not having fun? Like, especially in the comedy world.
And so a couple others, Dan Sheehan and Rachel Weeks, both luminaries of the Magic community, started out talking together. They were both involved in Magic, but had a podcast called Commander Sphere, which is now turned into Pie Break.
I believe that's correct. Dan was talking about the teaser in the tweet was like, what's the color identity of Pasta Primavera? So great. Let's get into that.
Sure. And it's pretty fun, esoteric conversations with folks. And they go pretty deep in that. It's amusing, but I really enjoyed the back and forth between Rachel Weeks and Dan Sheehan as they talk about like which dragon in Magic legendary creature, they went through like 2 episodes breaking it down, would be a most suitable stepfather to your child.
Do you remember who they picked?
I don't remember, but Nicol Bolas was not up there as far.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Ugin would be either.
So just fun, ridiculous, off the wall things like that they talk about. You can go back and listen to those. I think they're all part of the Pie Break family of episodes now. There is no, I think, Commander Sphere podcast on its own. So Commander's Brew, Shawn Tabaris and Andy Hull, they're Canadians. And one of them was actually in What We Do in the Shadows, like 4 or 5 episodes, is like one of the dopey Canadian friends, next door neighbors.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great show.
Yeah. And
well done.
I know Andy Hull had done stand-up before, but I also find Shawn Tabaris hilarious. And they have a lot of what I find the funniest on their channel is they used to do this fake news channel in which they would report on events like from like the blind eternities or whatever. They'd have a reporter just floating around in the middle of doing this on the scene interview as to what was going on. A lot of different character work, always the worst possible costumes. Like they would dress up as Bruce Tarl or Odric. They had like 2 Odric twins that would do like a Hans and Franz type thing. I think it's worth a watch. Nobody watched it, of course. There's only like a couple hundred views on each one. That's why I'm going to highlight it here. And then Game Night Comedy Bits, one of the only channels I will watch the commercials on, to be honest, because they're usually kind of funny.
Yeah, they do. It's not just like they don't pipe into other people. They create them themselves, and they do little jokes, little sketches almost with them.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, we're probably online more than is healthy for anybody. However, it's part of the bag, right? So because we're online all the time, there's some things that are real and valid and matter a lot. And then there's some things that are just like, why are people upset today? I don't really understand. Like, what could comedy do for Magic players? What is important about it? I know that's a broad, big question. So
help us to take it a little less seriously.
Yeah, on the baseline, right? Yeah.
On the baseline. And I mean, it's funny too that I'm saying that about a game. It's a game. And,
right.
But at the same time, it is serious. It's livelihoods. It's many people's major, like it's my number one hobby.
Where we met all of my friends that I'm currently with outside of the high school buddies, you know.
Yeah. A lot of my social circles become, I mean, I have some greater social circles as well,
sure.
but a lot of Magic players in the area. But I think comedy in general, it'd be the same answer that I give for comedy in any sphere, which is that like taking life a little less seriously and having more flexibility and less rigidity is good. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your day to day. It's comedy and Magic is if this game was drab and never it took itself very seriously, you'd have a small portion of people that would like it more. You would have a lot less people like it at all.
Absolutely. So that's a good note that I think we can end on. Is there anywhere that folks can find you online that you want them to talk to you or, you know, see your stuff?
I mean, don't talk to me. I'm horrible.
Hey,
no,
don't do it.
No, no. I love what we heard here first. Brandon does not want to be talked to, observed, looked at, thought about. No, I love it when people chime in comments or just message me or just share the space in the community. I love it. I'm on the major platforms, but I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter.
Yeah, it doesn't deserve the other name. It's fine.
Yeah, and still just doing shorts at the moment and doing skits, and we'll keep doing that until it's either no longer fun or I can do something bigger and better.
Awesome. Well,
thank you, Shawn.
The invite sits for you to join in on the D&D Cube. Not sure when it's going to happen, but Triple Strike Goblin is in there, and
Sold.
Time to go ham.
Do I have to keep my head on the table?
No, but there is in flavor with D&D a enter the dungeon card in which you probably have to play a sub game underneath the table.
Under the table?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, great. You and Carl will join up because usually we just hate draft it so Carl doesn't get to play it. It's kind of mean, but we're all old friends, so.
What are friends except people you can hate draft against?
Absolutely. Really healthy relationships going on. So if you all enjoyed this discussion, be sure to follow us on X/Twitter or Twix, whatever you want to call it, at Rule Zero Podcast.
Twix?
I've heard that before on a sports podcast.
Really?
Yeah, Twix. It kind of stuck with me, apparently. Or email us at rulezeropodcast@gmail.com. Let us know. And if you would like for us to highlight one of your decks, we'd love to. Just reach out. And don't forget, in Magic, there's no problem that a Rule Zero conversation cannot solve.